to Talk It Out, where we talk it out. My name is Duryea, and these are my wonderful panelists. First and foremost, we have Damali, my college friend, Cody Francis, CEO of Cody Paul Media, Timothy D. Haas, veteran and currently enrolled in nursing school. We've got my best friend, Emily Dotson-Corderoni. She's got an MA in American Studies. She's currently studying in her PhD in American Studies as well. We've also got my brother, Corey Collier, who's a veteran and entrepreneur. And we have Becky Becker, the chairman of performing arts at Clemson University. This space was created as a means where people of opposing viewpoints can have a productive dialogue in a healthy and respectful way, keeping in mind that it isn't about proving who's right or wrong. It's about listening and being heard. So by the time this is posted, it'll at least be maybe a week or two after all these events. We just recently, probably 20 minutes ago, the president got off TV explaining that he is going to issue martial law as a response to the protests and riots that are happening. So instead of doing our normal flow, we're going to do things a little bit different today. I'm going to give each of the panelists a little bit of time just to say what's on their mind, just to kind of get the energy off, because we're all feeling that energy, so that we can have a productive dialogue. All right, so let's start with Corey. How do you feel? Just a little blurb.
Well, I'm really not worried about how I feel. I'm worried about what's actually going on. And I see a lot of smoke and mirrors. So I'm coming from the conspiracy side of the coin. So, I mean, that's the best thing I could say. So it's really not about how I feel. This has been done before. Every summer, there's someone who gets killed by the police on national TV, and then there's an outrage, and then there's a form of curfew or martial law. It's happened in Ferguson in St. Louis. It's happened before, so, that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, and we're going to dig into that more because I don't think you're alone in some of your thoughts. Let's hear from Emily.
I guess I have been not thinking very much about how I feel about it. Trying to do a lot of listening, a lot of reading, and definitely living in St. Louis. I think all of this, as like Corey referenced, is brought up a lot of very bad memories for the city. So it's been a little chaotic here. And there's been some violence and stuff, but honestly, I feel safe, so I think, I don't want to overreact to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about you, Damali? Let's talk to you. How are you feeling right now?
I feel like all of my emotions are sitting here. I think I try to not be too sad, not be too angry. But it's a lot. It's a lot going on. I'm not a person who tends to watch the news a lot because, I'm an empath. I take it all in. But I've been watching since, school got out. So with the pandemic, with, everything that's going on, it's just a lot at one time. So I'm definitely struggling with trying to balance my emotions right now.
Okay. Sergeant Haas, how do you feel about that?
Man, stop that.
I
feel like we potentially could be on the cusp of actually getting change in the country, depending on how the next week plays out, the week or two. I think you made a really good point. I think we need to stop trying to make arguments on right and wrong and more how do we make progress on this issue. And I think that's something that most people don't do. It's always, I'm right, you're wrong. But that doesn't get us progress. So I think that's a big part of it. But
Becky?
It's hard to articulate how I feel. I wrote about it yesterday, actually, because I was feeling really heavy. I'm sad. I'm ashamed. I'm angry. I'm worried. I'm really worried about people out, exposing themselves to brutality, and when I say that, I mean in protest, but I'm so happy that people are protesting, but I feel like I should be there, but I'm scared to be there. Not because of, anything except COVID, so it's really weird. I'm in a really weird space right now. These are things that I care deeply about, but I feel like something has changed in me because of what's happening right now. I'm just like so done. I feel like I have to do things.
Mm-hmm. And Cody.
You would say me for last.
I'm last. What you talking about?
You know what I mean. But no, I've been through I don't know how many emotions over the past couple weeks or so. Especially I say one thing, Corey, from a conspiracy standpoint, if a explosion of new cases don't come up and everybody's been outside together protesting, they're gonna have to tell me something. That's all. They're gonna have to tell me something.
Right.
But no, I feel I'm kind of like in the same space somewhat with Becky. I'm done, and I'm with my friends here in Columbus, and we've met and we're trying to come up with solutions of how to fight this thing systemically. Right. Of course, we had a protest yesterday. We're gonna have one next Saturday. But that's my mindset of we're trying to figure out solutions long-term and short-term and long-term of how to fight this thing. So.
Thank you all. Just a little bit for me, I'm an empath too. So I watched the George Floyd video for all of like 10 seconds before I couldn't even, maybe not even the whole 10. I look at all my friends and my family, and some of my friends that are never angry they won't even speak. They won't even talk right now because it's a feeling that's in the air. The way I'm feeling right now is that because my beliefs tell me to always be a positive source of change, but it's hard when in times like this to think positive, to look at people out there doing some rioting and being like, I can't necessarily say I agree to every form of protest, but I also can't say that I don't understand why they chose that form of protest. And with the conspiracy thing, there's a lot of that's not even conspiracy. On the news, they're talking about that's actually happening, where provocateurs that are against the movement are going out and causing trouble to make the movement have less validity. So, and these are kind of the things I want us to discuss today. So just to get us started, Becky, you brought up COVID-19. My personal belief is that the overwhelming response that this has had, especially from people outside of our community, is heavily due to the fact of COVID-19. I feel like COVID-19, for a lot of people, it put us all on the same level where we realize there's a human quality first. All that other stuff comes second. And I think that's why you see so much support outside of the Black community. And I just kind of want to know what you guys think about that.
Well, just one thing that I'm very concerned about and have been concerned about. And it's like, I feel like with COVID, the Black community has been more hurt and threatened already. And we've lost more people. And now this is just like it's like an attack from a different direction that has always been there, of course, right? But it feels like, I don't know, like how in a time like this, to have an even uglier attack on Black bodies is just, it's overwhelming. And I guess that's why I think people who I would never even expect in the past to respond are now responding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because I think they're seeing that this is just, it's more than too much. It's always been too much, and finally people are seeing that.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to chime in?
I think for a long time, and Becky, this goes to your point. I think I've actually seen a couple people say this, and this is why I think this way. A lot of white people have had the mindset that neutrality is the best thing. So because I have black friends and white friends, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to stay where I'm at. And I think more than anything, these situations back to back, you got Ahmaud Arbery, you got Breonna Taylor, then you have George Floyd, then you have the lady in Central Park, and stuff coming out daily, weekly, monthly, whatever. It's got people fed up, period. And I know me, my situation, I think about my friends like that. I literally had to tell, I was on a phone call with one of my friends. He's black. He was going out for a jog. This was after Ahmaud Arbery. And I was like, bro, be careful. Like, I shouldn't have to tell him that. And it bothers me. Like the fact that I know without a shadow of a doubt, I can jog around my apartment complex with no problem. But my friend, I have to tell him to be careful when he goes around his neighborhood that he's lived at least for the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I honestly think people are fed up. And I think the people that still hold that same racist, all lives matter, whatever point of view, that has to be changed through conversations like this, where and I think Duryea, we talked about it yesterday or a couple of days ago, where people are opened up to have that conversation. I'll say this: there's a space where I guess white people can speak and not be judged, and then they also have to have an open up heart to be told, hey, like, don't say that over here. Like, I know your heart, so say this versus saying that. Like, there needs to be that open space.
He's responding to Emily and me are like best friends. Like, man, like when I've been on the ground, she's like, okay, I'll leave you down there for a minute, but I'm gonna have to pick you up as soon as you're good, So she texted me and she was like, I don't want to say anything that's like offensive to you. And I'm like, you're my fucking friend. Like, and I know your heart. And I understand that there's a part of that conversation needs to happen. It needs to happen to me, in my opinion, across races, religions, because we're all here. You know what I'm saying? It's not like y'all go on Uranus and y'all go on Pluto. No, we're all here. So we need to figure it out. And in that process, okay, some people are that's what I was telling, I was telling Cody and his wife. In the process, white people might say some stuff that's not politically correct, but I'd much rather you say some politically incorrect shit trying to be helpful than not help. And you see there's a problem. And I was telling Corey this. I was like, I think that people as a whole are going to look at this like, what the hell? Because when someone is shot, to me, even I'm not saying this excuses it, but when someone's shot, that's an in the moment thing. You know what I'm saying? These are emotions are heightened. Everything's going on. But when somebody got their knee on somebody's neck for almost 10 minutes, people don't even watch YouTube videos for that long. You know what I'm saying? That you can't deny that. You can't act. He didn't feel like he was in. There's no excuse. And I think that's what we're seeing right now.
So I think that when this initially happened, I made a post about it after seeing a lot of arguments on Facebook, and I made a post that I was like, man, this was a case, this was a situation, and I, not to speak lightly of the situation, but this was a situation where it was cut and dry. Like, you can't see that and be like, oh, well, maybe he could have done this, or maybe he could have done that, or he was resisting. And so I thought it was going to bring everyone together, and there wasn't going to be an argument about it. And after seeing a bunch of arguments, I made the point that I was like, I think this was a missed opportunity. I've since kind of changed my stance on that, because I think that, there's still very much an opportunity here. I just think that I would have hoped that we could have been, better. And I speak out in the sense that, like, rioting and looting, like, while I very much understand that, and it's come out that those are also probably very much different players. But yeah, I think that's a good point.
You know, I read a really interesting article about looting. It's called In Defense of Looting. And it's actually, the authors turned it into a book that's coming out in October. But I can't remember everything that was in it, but I had my students read it and stuff. But I remember her saying that there's like a long history of looting by like Black Americans, and that goes all the way back to the beginning, where she was saying that technically if you were enslaved and you run away, that's looting.
Wait, for the slave to run away, or for?
Yeah, you're stealing yourself because you're property.
What?
I actually thought that was pretty mind-blowing. I had never thought of it that way before, but it really made me feel differently about looting in general. I mean, I already, as Duryea knows, have a lot of problems with capitalism and stuff, so looting doesn't bother me the way it bothers a lot of people. But I thought that was a particularly like insightful thing to sort of show how far back there's been this struggle for ownership in the Black American community. So
that reminds me of something I saw on Facebook that I really appreciated, which was just basically someone saying, where do you think they got all that stuff in the museums from?
Yes.
And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, hello, go to the British Museum, go to any museum in this country. We have taken so much from other countries and other cultures, and probably the classic example is the British Museum in London. I mean, part of the Acropolis is there. You know, they took it from atop the mountain in Athens. So anyway. Yeah.
I think it's
the whole Killmonger Black Panther argument too.
That pretty much is what that is. That whole movie is about. And it's interesting. I think along with not only the times changing, but education and the connectivity that we have as people, and I mean human beings, the internet, you know what I'm saying? Like, the thing I think that's amazing is like, because when Beijing was doing this, this was happening, right? Like last year, Chinese citizens were protesting, and they got support from Americans. And it's interesting for me to see the support coming from Europe right now. Yeah. Like, there's places in Europe that are shutting down, you know what I'm saying? And what I'm getting at is essentially this is a racist situation, but it's also like clearly and blatantly a human rights thing. I feel like Cody was right when he said that people feel like it's okay, not feel like, but he basically was saying that they chose not indifference, but neutrality was the word. I like that word. They chose neutrality because not only it was because it was easy. Yeah, it's easy to stay neutral. But after a while, you have to think about, okay, if it's so easy for those human rights to be violated, even though I'm not Black, what's going to happen to me once, you know, eventually it's going to turn into something bigger, which kind of goes into what we just heard about on the news. Because I saw a video online where there's a bunch of white college kids were standing and filming the police walking down the street. And the police told them to get in the house, and they wouldn't go. And then they say, get in the house. They wouldn't go to get in the house. And then somebody said, all right, light them up. And they started firing those rubber bullets at them. Like, I literally, my mouth hit the floor. I was like, I can't believe I just saw that. Like, there's no justification for that. They clearly weren't protesting. They were on their porch. So it's all a snowball thing.
Whoa. They were on their property?
They were on their porch. They were standing on their porch because when they started shooting the bullets, they got inside real quick. It wasn't even but 2 seconds before, and it was crazy because the way the video was shot, I felt like I was standing right there, bro. But at the same time, and I know that feeling, that look on your face is right there. I know that feeling, but I also want to bring light to some other things that are happening. There are police out there who, in my personal opinion, thought one way before all this, and now they think differently. I personally think there's a lot of people who had to, at this point, they had to be like, all right, what is this going to be?
I want to say something. I think, forgive me. So I think what's frustrating for me is that now we have this video that I haven't watched where people are like waking up, or people are like, oh my gosh, like that's so horrible. But we have had to deal with this for years. And so when things like this typically happen, we're angry for a week, and then we just got to suck it up and keep moving. Then it happens again. We hashtag it. We jog, we do all these different things and try to figure out what to do with our anger. And then we keep on moving. Then it happens again. And it's just a continue, like I think I tagged you on that video yesterday. There's a video where a couple of artists got together and all they're doing is saying the names of people who've been killed by the police. And every time I hear that song, it's so chilling, not just because of the sound of it, but the fact that they're yelling these names out. And someone made a comment in the YouTube comments and said, this song is going to be, because it's pretty long, because they're just saying the names. And someone says, this song is going to be 700 hours long before the end of 2016. This is when the video was made, and they were naming Sandra Bland and Eric Garner. They were just naming people. The song is just them naming people. And when I was watching it, I was just like, this is so frustrating because there's nothing you can do. And I think that's the feeling of frustration. And there are a lot of times where people are trying to, but he shouldn't have run or he shouldn't have said something back to the cops. People are trying to figure out how to justify it. And in most cases, there's no justification. Mm-hmm. And then the people get off and we just have to say, oh, well, we lost that one. And then here comes another one. And then there's so many that we don't hear about or we don't have a video for. And so while we see people waking up or we see people who are like, oh my God, he had his knee on this man's neck for 8 minutes, 10 minutes. We've been seeing this stuff and we just have to just suck it up. And that's like the worst feeling because even before this got out of hand, when I'm talking to my friends, we're like, it's going to be the same situation as everybody else. And that's a frustrating feeling. And so when I'm watching the riots and I'm not moved by it. Like I want to be like, oh, you shouldn't damage buildings. I know you shouldn't damage buildings. I know you shouldn't steal out of stores. But part of me is like, I don't care about any of that. I care about this man who was on this ground and what's going to happen to the people who killed him. And that's not even, I'm not saying it's not a concern. I feel like right now it is the protest and maybe that's just what the media is doing, but no, what's going to happen to this man who killed him? What is going to happen to him?
And the three others.
That's another one that we just got to keep on moving from.
It's crazy that you say that because, and I just want to touch on a few points. The idea of angry black man, angry black woman, in my opinion, it stems from strong black man, strong black woman, which stems from exactly what she's talking about. You're black, deal with it. You have to move on. We had to in slavery. You know what I'm saying? It was like, this is just what it is. Pick yourself up, young. And then at some point, that was a sense that gave us a sense of pride. Every black child is told before they start going to school by their parents, hey, you have to be better than the white kids to get half as much. And the idea that I would have to, if I had a kid, I would have to look him and say, and I couldn't not say that to him because it's true. Not that every white person out there is looking for me to fail, but it's just stacked against you. And then to have someone tell you, oh, no, you're not dealing with that. That's not a thing. I don't have privilege. It kind of then, it takes away from the experience that I had. There are certain situations in which I'm more privileged than others. Me and Emily talk about this all the time. I'm a dude, you know? So in certain situations, just because I'm a dude, I'm not, but I can't deny that that's my privilege in that setting. So in that same token, when in the situations where you are privileged, it's not that you should feel guilty about your privilege. Recognize it and make sure that you're doing your part to support those that are not privileged. You know what I'm saying?
Duryea, two things real quick, and then I'll hop off. Hold on. So, one thing is I saw some guy today that posted on somebody. It was a white guy. He made a long post, and in his post, he was like, you know what, I stand with you guys, Black Lives Matter. And I was like, okay, cool. Somebody commented and was coming against him, another white guy. And this dude had the nerve to comment and say, I don't believe, number one, he said, I don't see color, which is stupid. And then number two, he said, I don't believe in discrimination, which is the same thing as me saying I don't believe in the speed limit. It doesn't mean it's there, right? Number one. Number two, Damali, to your point, and this is what me and my friends have been talking about, trying to come up with things, is we don't want this to be over in a week. But we know that's usually how it goes. I remember sitting down watching the Trayvon Martin verdict with my wife, and everybody was outraged for 2 weeks and then moved on. And then, of course, everything else happened. Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Philando Castile. We could just keep naming forever, it seems like. And my thing is, it's almost like we have to be intentional about still having the intent to still have plans and to still try to fix this on one hand. On another hand, there is a sense of lost hope because this has been happening forever. I mean, before we were even here, we're talking about centuries upon centuries of oppression and marginalization. We're talking about centuries of it. And one thing that bothers me, and this is what I keep bringing up, is you have a guy that walked into a church that murdered people. And when the cops got him, they put a bulletproof vest on him and took him to Burger King. He just murdered 9 people in a church and they treat him well. But you have a guy that's not resisting arrest, sitting right next to the police car when you could have easily just put him in there. But
That was already in the police car.
Right.
That's the crazy thing. Corey
Right.
told me that. Corey told me the same thing. He showed me the video about the guy, and I didn't see this half of the video. The only half of the video that I saw, because I told you it was hard for me to watch.
Yeah.
And then finding out that the girl who caught that video was 14. You know what I'm saying? She was a 14-year-old girl who was just happy. And what if she wasn't there? But Corey was explaining to me that there were other options there. I kind of want to let Corey talk for a minute about what he was talking about before and how he feels about going at this.
Well, basically, it's really not. I'll put it like this. I'm coming at this from a tyranny perspective. The racial perspective is obviously there, but even further, the tyranny perspective. Now, it's hard for me not to blend the two, tyranny and racial. So I'm going to just say what I'm going to say. We tried it with Colin Kaepernick, the peaceful way. And they made him the bad guy. You remember that?
Yep.
They said he was disrespecting the military. He told you why he was kneeling. He told us. Go ahead.
Which was funny because most military people supported him. Most military people, hey, that's your right to do that. Like, that's not disrespectful. So the media taking that stance or people taking that stance against them is just completely,
One side note real quick, Corey, with Colin Kaepernick, he was sitting first and then consulted a military guy that used to be a Green Beret, and the Green Beret told him, white guy, was like, hey, bro, I get how it can be negative if you sit, but kneel, that would come off better. He literally was consulted by a white military guy to kneel. So anyway, and people still didn't support him, but go ahead.
And I got a lot of respect for Colin Kaepernick because he pretty much gave up his status as a black quarterback on a pretty decent team. I was a 49ers fan. I'm Falcons all the way first, but 49ers since Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
And I just like the colors. He gave all that up to address the situation, and he told people what he was doing, and they ignored him. That's really the frustration. It's not just
ignore, Corey. They did it was deeper than ignore. They muffled him is essentially what they did. They said everything they made it. The worst thing that you can be called is a traitor. And as an American, the worst thing you can be called is unpatriotic. They're pretty much, those two words are synonymous. They said he was unpatriotic for doing it.
But no, let me finish. Another key thing is they was attacking his blackness. They said you have a half white, you're half white and half black. You don't count. You see what I'm saying? That's bullcrap. And then they even go they go further and say that he has no right to address it, like, because he's not black. So basically, with that statement in itself, is saying what you're saying is not valid.
Yeah, I mean,
The frustration, and me and Duryea actually got in an argument about this, about backing people into a corner. He's like, we're humans, so we're intelligent beings. I said, but we also have a reptilian part of our brain. So if you back any animal into a corner, it's only going to be two responses: fight or flight. What you're seeing now is people are being backed into a corner.
and when just to dig into that conversation, it was like me and Corey, we're brothers, so we get it. We have very, very deep conversations. But I was talking about, because I'm more of a pacifist when it comes to things. I feel like violence, because we are intelligent beings, shouldn't be our go-to response. It should be a last resort. So I feel like there are ways to make things happen. Now, that's an excellent point. We tried a lot of peaceful protest, but we've tried a lot of violence too. I don't think that one or the other one worked. I think some peaceful protests worked and some didn't. I think some violent protests worked and some didn't. My point at the beginning was to say, I'm not going to protest violently, but when I look at other people protest violently, smart violence, like breaking a window, that to me is like not a big deal. You're not hurting people. I just say be smart about it. But the idea is that there has to be some sort of real and lasting dialogue, which is unfortunate that I couldn't get someone on here who
check this out.
Disagreed. Go ahead.
You have to realize that they're already talking about implementing martial law, which will not be peaceful. So what I'm getting at is they're not coming out saying, I'm sorry. They're not doing it the peaceful way. And we have a Second Amendment right. And the reason the Second Amendment was implemented was if and when the government brings tyranny. We have a right to get violent, a literal constitutional right. And that's what people are not understanding.
And
you have a right to defend yourself.
Corey's point, I think, is really important, because this idea of the reptilian brain, first of all, you are so right. I feel like the situation is such that there is no other response but something visceral and physical and violent. And I can't judge that. I can't. And not just because I also think that we've looted other countries and we've pillaged and burned and, been horribly violent with many, many other civilizations, but also just because at our base, yes, we're all human, but we're all also animal, all of us.
There's a question I kind of want to pose to the group. I don't want to go too far off topic, but we kind of spoke on it with the Kaepernick thing about him being mixed race. And I think mixed race issues are not just a black thing. I mean, not just a white. I think both white and black people kind of muddy that line of what makes you black and able. So in my opinion, Kaepernick had the right to say what he said because he was a human, no matter what he was, black or white, period. And I think now we're at that point, and I think a lot of white people felt the same way, like, oh, I'm not black, so if I say something about it, I'm going to look like either a race traitor or like, what all those negative terms that they used back in the day, an N-lover, all that stuff. So I actually kind of want to talk to Cody, because Cody's a father of 2 interracial children. So, and he was telling me, the idea that he's going to have to look at his sons and know that he has certain rights that they don't. So I kind of want to talk and just have him talk about his experience in this and just, yeah.
Okay. I wasn't going to bring it up. You know that, Duryea.
I know.
Because my mindset is this is more of a human issue than just black versus white.
Right.
Even though that is there. Yeah, I literally I'll say this, I got emotional the other day looking at my son. My oldest son is 5. He don't know what's going on. He's innocent in all of it, but to know that, like, even talking to Tam about it, Like she said, we was told when we were kids, you know, just comply with the police and you'll be okay. That's really not the case. We've seen that over and over again. So it's made it difficult on me just as a father, knowing that I have certain privileges that my sons don't, and that me being white does not save them from society, period. At the end of the day, society is going to see them as two light-skinned boys, period. And that does get to me, and it bothers me. And also me being so vocal about this, as you know, Duryea, Tam is actually concerned about me as far as somebody looking at me crazy or treating me different because of my stance, which I really don't care. But no, I mean, it's definitely concerning. I'll say this, it helps me understand better, because of course, I'll never understand what it's like to be a black man in America. I never will. But it kind of gives me a different perspective. Knowing
let me throw this at you.
Yeah.
If you think about the original history of the police,
Mm-hmm.
do you know the original history?
Not the original history. No.
Okay. Basically, when the slaves were freed, they were an organization that policed the free slaves. They listened in on their conversations. They would infiltrate their meetings and gatherings because they feared that the slaves would turn around and plot against them.
Got you.
So they policed them.
Mm-hmm.
So the history, they have always been a tyrannical organization.
Makes sense. Yep.
So my question is, so what do y'all say about the police that are out there kneeling with the protesters, the ones that are out there literally right now?
I mean,
I feel like they should give up their badge.
But wouldn't that be counterproductive?
Yeah, at some level, I think we need police in order to maintain a certain level of civil society. But I mean, I support him 100%, and I hate the statement like, "Oh, he's a bad apple." No, there's a lot of bad apples. Like, there are a lot of police out there. I think ultimately the first step in trying to curb the racial, like the disproportionate effect that Black people feel in the United States. I think ultimately, like, that starts with just how they're treated by police. I think they need more funding. I think they should have more higher requirements. Like, you can be 18 and have a GED and become a police in 12 weeks. That's insane to me.
Right. I'm a barber. Cosmetologists and barbers get more hours of training than police officers.
Yep. Talk about it.
And secondly, if you hold on, I don't want my point. I want to slip my point.
Oh, you're fine.
You need a pen.
Well, it'll come back to me. All right.
I think it's my brother. Look, so I get what you're saying. The interesting thing about me about the whole process is this. I was recently talking to someone, which really there's some other panelists that were supposed to be here.
Oh, this is my point. Real quick.
Go ahead.
Police don't need more. They need more training, but not just training. They need more accountability.
100%.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
they're even going to jail, but they're getting plea deals. They're getting sentences cut in half.
Let's talk about plea deals.
I do kind of want to have that conversation because, like I said, there was another panelist that was coming, and me and her, we both have felonies. So the thing about it is going through the justice system. I've met some really asshole-ish cops, but I've also met some cops that wanted me to get help. You know what I'm saying? And the reason I say that is to say, because I personally was told recently, somebody said to me, you know, the problem is that we don't tell young Black men to become police in our neighborhood. We don't tell them that. And if there were more young Black men, because there's plenty of Black men in the community that are pillars of the community. They love
Here's the problem with that. Most cops won't ride with you unless you're dirty. You know that, right?
I don't want to say most. I don't want to say most.
That's there.
A significant portion.
Really?
Yes. Unless you got some dirt on you, watch Training Day again.
But Training Day was
not just movies. Go ahead.
No, I get what you're saying. And I guess for me, I can't speak to that because I've not experienced. It's tough for me because like I don't like to like overshare, but some of the experiences that I've had where I had my life saved by the police in certain situations. You know that.
But do you think that those same cops that you had positive relationships with would have stood up if they saw a cop killing a black man?
Right, like fundamentally the issue is
I
think it's really about people being complicit more than
Right.
being actually violent.
All those cops had prior.
I hear you.
All of
all
them.
those cops had prior incidents of injustice.
All of
Really?
them.
They were standing
Yeah.
around around protecting them.
But also, this goes to the complicity of all white people who listen to a joke or watch, someone mistreat
yeah.
someone
I see where
else,
you're going,
or hear their family say something
Yep.
and just let it slide.
I think one
Yeah.
word Corey said is the key. One word, and he said a lot of good stuff, but one word: accountability. That is key. If you increase accountability, this is what people don't know. And I don't know if I've had so many conversations over the past week and a half, but when it comes to police, they literally have unions and laws to protect them. And that is why they continue to get off from these crimes that they commit.
And
So
keep their salaries and their pension.
100%. If my mindset, and this is my first mindset in as far as moving forward with doing something about it, if you take away those protections, now what? If you take away those protections, now what?
So do you all think?
I don't want to go around busting unions, but
No, and don't get me wrong. I love the point of unions holistically, but I'm talking about they protect them from criminal issues. I get when it comes to equal pay, when it comes to pensions, all of that. I think teachers need a union because teachers don't get paid enough. But when it comes to cops, the unions help. They help protect them from these criminal charges. Like why would the police officer that kneeled on this man for 9 minutes be able to see the video? Any evidence they compile, he's the first one that gets to see it before anybody else.
So
It's
my
literally
question
a law.
to you all is where do we draw the line? Is there a line between? I kind of want to reference this article that they have right now. They said that I want to reference it, but
There is no line.
Hold up.
How is a handcuffed man resisting arrest?
Right. That's not the line I was talking about. Let me frame it. So there's an article that said that in Norway the police there haven't killed someone since 2006 or something like that. The police, they haven't killed anyone in that long. So my question is, where's the line between when it's justifiable for the police to kill someone and in comparing it to Norway, is there a line at all?
So I think we look at the numbers, right? Like so far in 2020, 2019, they shot 1,020 something individuals, right? And that's not unarmed. That's just holistically, right? That's still a really large number. And then unarmed, they've shot 400. I think it's 452 people. Black, white, doesn't matter, right? Like that to me is 452 people too many, regardless of race. Like, I think Chris Rock said it best. Like, police should be like airliners. Like, there should be. I'm sorry, if you make a mistake, you're done. Like, you can't make like if you're in the military and you go to a different country and you make a mistake over there, you probably get in more trouble than a police officer here in the United States, and you're dealing with American citizens' lives. And I'm not to say that other lives don't matter, but like, the cops are supposed to be protecting us, and they're not.
Right.
That's disproportionately not protecting Black people.
What was your name again?
Timothy.
Okay, Timothy. Great point. And that's what I was getting at. It's clearly either this cop considered this man less of a human being. That's that racial side. But tyrannically, that's a big issue as well.
Yeah.
If this was any color person, it's wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Period. Yeah.
That's where I saw this, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really good, because like, whether you're white and you don't see color, or whether you're Black, or no matter who you are, you see this, and that's that was a human rights issue
Yes.
as well as a Black Lives Matter issue.
And just take a timer and put 9 minutes on the timer and watch it go. I mean, 10 minutes when you're reading a book or watching a movie goes like that. But do 9 minutes when you're watching the clock. That's how long this man had his knee on his, crushing his windpipe.
And those 9 minutes of that, those probably were the longest 9 minutes.
He begged for his mother.
Yeah. A grown man. He was an adult man.
And his mother is dead. That's like his mother's not even a lot, like she's gone. And he
But what blows my mind is that people were standing and watching.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. I see somebody get pushed and I'm like, yo, but people to stand around and to watch this absolutely blows my mind.
Everybody's scared of cops.
100%. I think most people I've talked to.
Point, Emily. There were people saying something. Not just that. Once the man says he can't breathe and you continue, that's intent to me. You get me? Because what they're going to do is they're probably going to find a way to not charge him with first degree. Because
I mean,
I talk about that. I actually want to talk about that because me and Corey talked about this before.
From a legal standpoint, it's not.
I was explaining to Corey
because of the
right. Yeah.
Well, they knew each other before this, so that
right. But you can know somebody. That doesn't mean you want to kill them or plan to kill them.
Sure, but I mean, are they investigating that?
So I think.
Wait. Let me get in for a second. So essentially, a lot of people are upset because I was going to ask, why do you think the riots are still persisting, even though he's been charged? A lot of people are mad because he was charged with third-degree murder and not first. And I was explaining to Corey, well, you're in this position as a lawmaker or a law enforcer, or not the enforcer, the prosecuting attorney. Okay, so if we charge him with first-degree murder has this like checkpoint of things that you have to hit, like intent, opportunity, all those things. And if you don't fit all those boxes, you can't make that case. So yeah, we charge him with first-degree murder, but he'll get off. So how about we charge him with something that he won't get off from? And then, but does that make it okay? So my question is, with that frame of mind, what is the right action to take for these lawmakers and people who are prosecuting this man?
I think it's a bigger picture too. I think another reason why the riots and stuff are going on is because there were 3 other officers there that haven't seen charges yet. Mm-hmm. So even the family came out and said they want the other officers charged too. He was kneeled on by 3 people, not one. It's just one had his knee on his neck. Mm-hmm. But that was my point too, Deria. It's like the family came out and they said, the family and the attorney said they wanted first degree. But in my mind, I'm like, how are you going to prove premeditation? That's the only thing. And I don't want him to get off. That's my mindset. It's right. Like, so what do you do? Right. Charge him with the biggest charge you have, or do you charge him with something that has a better chance of making? Yeah.
And that's our justice system, period. Not just this case. That's just how the justice system works. Like sometimes they'll overcharge you, so you'll get scared into taking a plea, but sometimes they won't charge you with what you probably could be charged with.
Is that what they do? They overcharge you to scare you into plea deals?
A lot of times.
Yes. Oh, no, I know. Oh, okay. You didn't hear me earlier when I said, hey, let's talk about plea deals.
Right.
But yeah, I kind of want to talk about, did y'all see the video of the 2 students? They pulled out the car?
Well, hold on real quick.
I didn't watch it.
Real quick.
I couldn't watch it either.
There's a man.
What?
Eating a bowl of ice cream.
Is this man me?
No.
Okay.
Officer busts in his door, shoots him in his own house.
Right.
Do you know what happened to her in court? Now,
there's a lot to that case, though.
Got 10 years, right?
But 10 years, you don't always serve the full 10.
No, right. You sure don't.
Yeah. And then you can get time reduced for good conduct. And most police officers don't go to GP. They go to PC. GP means general population. Yeah. And PC means protective custody. So how hard is it to have good conduct in protective custody? Not that hard, right? So she could basically end up doing 2 years, one on probation. Yeah. I've been locked up before.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
half of that time is served on probation with an ankle bracelet. So that's what I mean by accountability. Even if they get charged, and the people riding know this.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
That's why they're so upset.
Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is I think the other reason that this is continuing, aside from the fact that it was in a situation that everyone could see clearly and respond to, we don't have any leadership.
None.
We're in a vacuum. And in fact, we don't just not have leadership, we have someone who is making things worse, willfully
and
making
intentionally
things worse.
And it's tough because I really, when it comes to Trump, because of my beliefs, I always want to be like, look, you can't put anyone in a box. Like, yeah, he's an asshole here, but look what he did for the economy. But after this shit, I'm like, I can't, no more.
Here's what you got to understand about the president. The president gets paid. That means he has a boss.
The boss is supposed to be us. Technically, as far as the Constitution, his boss is supposed to.
Just let me tell you.
Go ahead.
I know exactly where you're going. Go ahead.
There is a shadow government above Trump because Trump was going to get chosen regardless, because you have to be a Freemason to become president, and females can't be Freemasons. So what I'm trying to tell you is they could be Eastern Stars, but they can't be Freemasons. That's how I knew Hillary wasn't going to win anyway. So what I'm getting at is ultimately, when you think about it, this was, for example, where is ISIS in the media now? They're just gone, right?
Gone. Yeah.
Oh, not necessarily. When you talk about insurgencies, they generally don't just go away. They just morph into something else.
It's the smokes and mirrors. That's what I'm trying to say.
I don't think that's necessarily true, because to me that's a whole other topic, and I don't want us to go into that. When you're talking about that, it's about perception. Like, if you're the insurgent, then your government is the bad guy. If you're the government, the insurgency is the bad guy, and that's
I got you. I'm coming from the perspective if they literally disappeared.
I don't think they disappeared. They just became unimportant.
They're just
that's my
not
point.
getting coverage.
If they were so much of a threat,
right?
We're not hearing. I bet you coronavirus is going to disappear soon.
I highly doubt that. They were talking about that on the news today. I saw on the news today, they were basically saying protests and riots most likely will lead to a spike in new cases.
If it doesn't, I know something.
And that's why they're going to bring in martial law.
I think we know something already anyways.
Right.
In South Carolina, we're having more and more cases. We just had our biggest day of cases yesterday.
Now,
I mean, Dury, I don't think you want to get into coronavirus, but when Texas opened up, we've been open up for a month and a week now. We have more cases than we've ever had before right now too, but our hospitalization rate's going down, so it doesn't matter.
Now, I don't want to get off on the corona.
And they're testing more. Yeah, I got you.
That because listen, coronavirus. The reason that people are like, oh, I feel like this is the coronavirus conspiracy. I don't, because I feel like coronavirus was an overreaction. I feel like it is a dangerous disease, but they've been very honest about what it does and how it affects people.
They don't know.
Huh? No.
Everything that the news is saying is that every day they're finding new things. It does something to your toes, apparently. I mean, like, they have no idea what this disease does.
Look, we're about to go with Corona. Wait.
If you want to do a Corona show, invite me back.
I'll bring it in.
Please.
That's a whole nother show.
I bring up Corona. This is the only reason I bring it up. Is because it's actually biological warfare, which equates to the tyranny that I was talking about.
I feel like if they was going to do biological warfare, it would have
a patent number.
Okay, I'm going to say one more thing about coronavirus.
You get to say one more thing, but
I don't have to say one more thing, but I'm going to, like, just because you said that too. No,
Can I ask a question about the conspiracy theory?
Go ahead.
Shadow government? All right, so Hillary Clinton, she was Secretary of State, right? So obviously had to work very closely with this shadow government. Why did she run for president? Wouldn't she have known that she couldn't win?
Because it's to mix up the masses. It's literally to get the masses in a stir. Democrats and Republicans, when they get off the news, they go have champagne and dinner together.
So this lifelong feminist woman is complicit in a shadow government that she knows doesn't allow women to hold the highest power. I mean, like, it just doesn't add up to me.
Sorry, I don't buy it.
Look, I promise you guys, we'll have this one. This one will happen. I don't want to
Invite me back for that one too.
I know, I like it. But because I do want to stay on topic, because to me, I think this is really important, because I think this is going to be a very important moment in our history, because I was thinking about Rosewood today. Has anyone seen that movie?
I haven't. No, I have not.
It's the old movie.
Rosewood, yeah. Rosewood was by the late John Singleton. May his talented ass rest in peace, because he's an amazing director. But that was one of the hardest movies for me ever to watch. Essentially, basically, a white woman who was having an affair lied about the fact that she was having an affair because the guy who was with her, he beat her. So she said it was a black guy. Now, Rosewood was this town in Florida that was highly affluent. Everybody there had mad bread, but the white town was not. They basically used this incident as means to destroy everything. And the way that they did it was incredibly violent. So they're talking about this idea that looting is, unjustified, and that this doesn't happen, and all this kind of stuff like that. And this made me think about that, because I think things like that need to be more widely known. Like just now when I asked, like, half of you guys were like, I don't even know what that movie is. That movie, situations like that, that's not the only time that happened. They were saying that it also happened in another place.
Wait, so this movie's based on a true story?
The only part that they can't confirm is that she did it because she was raped. That's the only part that they get. But this
true story.
Everything else happened. Yeah. They don't know why she blamed the black man for raping her. I think that.
The class that I'm about to
movie.
teach is about how usually things that are based on a true story are not
No, this
actually
is the
true.
thing.
So
There's still people who survived that. Well, when the movie was made, there were people who survived it who were still alive.
okay.
It was like in the 20s, right? It was after the war.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it was after.
I'll read about it.
Yeah, I have seen that movie now that you tell me the story.
The movie's got Ving Rhames in it and Don Cheadle.
It's an amazing movie.
Good movie.
But I think the reason I bring that up is because I just want more people who don't see it, because I think there are people out there who see it and just don't care. And then those people, that's a choice. You know what I'm saying? We can get to those people, but right now, I think the people who we should focus on is the people who are somehow blind to it, who still believe that this is just us whining.
Yeah, I've been working on this essay that is for white people, so like you don't really have to worry about it. But one of the things that I talk about in it is that I feel like people have this idea that because they believe that all people are equal, that they're not racist. Which, I mean, yeah, has a logic to it, but your unconscious and your conscious don't always line up.
Right.
And I think that that's the problem, is that these things, it's, like when I get on the subway and I'm like, who am I going to sit by, the black woman or the white dude? The part of my brain that goes, oh, sit by the white guy, it's a flash. It's so easy for you to almost act like that racist thought never even happened, but it did. And I think that that's maybe getting at the core a little bit of the things that people need to start thinking about.
Is that inherently a racist issue, a decision though? And I only ask that from the sense that people are naturally going to congregate to.
Yeah, I know. My husband's a psychologist.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I definitely think that there's something to be said for that. But mostly, I think it's racism.
But that's not to say that you're not sitting next to a black person because you think lesser of them.
That's actually prejudice that you're describing.
Yeah.
Not racism.
No, racism is prejudice, discrimination, or something based off the fact that you think your race is superior to theirs.
Not exactly. That's prejudice. Racism is an actual system. There's a reason.
Racism. Yeah. When they talk about.
Go ahead.
When they talk about, because I had the conversation before, it's like we were talking about if black people can be racist or not. And, a lot of people feel like black people can't be racist because when they say that, when they use the term racism, they're speaking specifically of the systemic racism.
Right.
I personally feel like I understand that. However, yes, black people can be racist. And sometimes we do and say really racist things. And I think the hard thing about mixing some of these issues, because I always talk to Corey about, like, it's hard not to muddle issues. Like, so I kind of want to talk about this. There's this excuse people keep bringing forth about black on black crime, which I get frustrated with that, but I understand it, because me personally, black on black crime, I'm a pacifist, so of course that it really pisses me off too. I don't know if it pisses me off more, but it definitely pisses me off because I'm like, you know, we need to really value black life. However, when you bring that up as a means to combat police violence on black people, you then make both issues less important, and you take the weight from both issues. So to me, I feel like you should look at one as like, yes, black on black crime is an issue, but so is this. And we shouldn't ever mix those two, because when you do that, I just repeating myself, it lessens
every single race, most of the violence is within that race.
So,
it's not a black thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
right. No. Yeah. I think it's important, like, to look at, like, the topic of just Black Lives Matter is very, very deep. And I think there's a lot of different factors that go into it. Like Duryea said, like, black crime in general, not just black on black crime, but black crime in general, right? 13% of the population commit 51% of murders, right? But, like, why?
They're convicted.
Right, but, like, why? I know, but I'm saying, like, why? And people love to quote that. But you have to look at why that is. They're disproportionately poor. They're disproportionately
that's due to history.
Right. Yeah. They're disproportionately uneducated. Right. Yeah.
For poverty. Sorry, I don't.
No. Yeah. I think we're.
No, it's a lot of layers, but yeah,
right, there's so many layers to it.
And guess what else? There is a relationship between poor and sad people having sex more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So they say don't make babies if you're poor. Well, I guess that's all they got to feel happy.
It's an antidepressant.
Subsidized single motherhood, like, that's the effect of a single parent household in general is so huge.
Well, when you tell people that if you have a baby, I'll give you a check as long as there's no man in the house, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. The whole system is stacked against.
The whole system is period.
And it's in people that are white, like, people that are white love to make the argument of, like, oh, systemic racism isn't a thing, and for the most part, there's no law now that says black people that affects black people disproportionately, but the effects of years and years and years and generations of laws have made a system that affects them disproportionately.
I mean, even when the recession happened, it impacted black families much more deeply than it did, because of the way that the subprime lending system was set up. People were targeting African American communities with these subprime loans, and then
the
literally
New Deal, Roosevelt, right? The New Deal.
Yeah. Yep. Well, no. I know what you're talking about, but no, she's talking about like the coronavirus stimulus package.
Yeah, in 2008 when we had the recession. I mean, but you're right. That what you're saying is exactly. I mean, it's been happening over many times that the financial system has just, targeted in a very bad way African Americans in this country.
In a big way. I go to get a loan, and I actually have the credit to get the loan. I still get denied. I'm trying to start a business. Do it the right way, right? That's what people say that they want. And I get denied because of the color of my skin, or because you don't like my dreadlocks.
Right.
I'm efficient. I talk well. I articulate well. I'm very brilliant, but yet
very brilliant. You heard that?
What I'm getting at is there is a system. So going forward again, does that not equate to tyranny?
So I have a question to ask the group, because to me, I always think about, okay, now once you identify the problem, that's great, but you got to have, add to the solution, right? So in our best case scenario, what would you like to see done? And I just also want you to
passports and go to Africa.
Let me finish asking the question. Wait, I want to speak to the children. because to me, I feel like Emily was talking about that initial responses on. I think that's a thing we're taught.
Mhm.
I don't think it's a thing we are from the onset. So
That
when do you have that conversation with your children? When do you start introducing them to the harsh realities of what they're going to experience, whether they're white or black or not? And if you're white, what do you even teach your children?
I have a question to caveat off of that because I know we briefly, I think, is it Cody? I think Cody briefly touched on it. Just the, like, when I look at people, I don't see color. Like, you are all just human beings to me. And not that I don't see it. I acknowledge it. Like, I know, like, but I treat everybody as human beings. So, and I'm curious to, like, I guess, like, a good question is, that's kind of what she's saying, is that she wants her kids to see people as just people, right? Not necessarily a black person. So the statement of, like, I don't see color, why is that inherently a bad thing?
I can answer that. And the reason I want to answer that is just because I know you not very well, but pretty well. And you're one of those people who's got like great intentions, you know? The reason people feel put off by that statement, I think when you say I don't see color, what you mean is to say I don't only see color. Because
Right. Okay.
you have to see it. It's there.
Right.
By saying you don't see it, it's essentially ignoring it.
Okay.
And that goes back to what Cody was talking about.
Ingenuous.
What's that word that you use, Cody? That I like? That word, it goes back to not ignoring it, but
When I talked about people being neutral.
yeah, but that wasn't the word you used. I like the
Yes, it was.
It was neutrality. Yes, it was.
Neutrality.
It goes back to that. It goes back to
It's like saying, basically, if you walk into a room and you see a Rottweiler versus a poodle, oh, I don't see that he's a fucking Rottweiler.
right.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Or about
Yeah.
Doesn't it also deny a person's experience? Because, like, that's, you know, I feel like when people say that, it denies the experience that they have lived because of the color of their skin. Yeah?
And
I'm not sure that you should treat everyone the same. I mean, people have been through different things.
This is my whole thing, and this is why I'm glad we're having this conversation, Timothy. It's good that you brought that question up, because I personally hate that statement, and I know hate is such a strong word, but I do. But granted, I get your intentions based on it, and that's why I'm glad we're having a conversation. You're not saying it like other people are. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you have
a lot
right
of
intentions.
people like him who are confused.
Yes. Yeah.
Why they can't say it.
Yeah, well, and it's really to me, the way it comes off is just like Corey said. If you go into a room with two separate dogs and it's a Rottweiler and a Chihuahua, and you say, well, I just see dogs, but they're two completely different.
Right.
Like, so, and it's like, to me, what it does, and this might be right or wrong, but this is just how I think of it in my head when I hear you don't see color. It strips people of identity and individuality. So that's what bothers me from it. But again, that's why I said I'm glad we're having this conversation.
And I think that's a big problem, though, is like a lot of people, a lot of white people, they say that, and how they mean it is like
completely different.
Different from the actual statement in and of itself.
But that's the point of this show.
These conversations are really scary for some people, I think.
Yeah.
I think you have to talk through things. I think you can't ignore things. I think you have to acknowledge, like, even when you think about, like you said, your sister having the conversation, like, I get it. Like, that's something I've never heard before, to just say, I'm not going to even say gay, or I'm not going to say this or that. I get that concept, but why not just talk through what it is, so that they don't have, when they do hear it, or when they hear it from someone else, there's no negative connotation behind it. Because you've already created the narrative for them.
Right. It's like
this thing like, oh no, I didn't. No, two people are loving each other. Bam. That's
like,
it.
Is it similar to like a kid finally realizing there's no Santa Claus?
You can have that conversation too.
You mean like when her kids inevitably find out about like racism and anti-gay sentiments and stuff?
Like it's gonna throw them off because, like, for example, in particular, I can speak for myself. My parents told me my dad don't even celebrate it, but my mother told me, I'm getting you your gifts. Ain't no Santa Claus. So
Right.
when it was the bottom line, I didn't get side or messed up, because when you kids really believe in Santa Claus, literally.
And you can explain to them why. You can explain to them the history behind it, or why people believe it, or why some parents don't tell their kids. Like, have those conversations.
Because I will say that, I mean, my husband and I were very, very clear with our sons. Now, they're my stepsons, but I was with them since they were 7. Now they're 25. You know, they're great guys. They're twins, whatever. Love them. But we were very, very clear about being okay with same-sex relationships, and had, you know, friends that they knew, et cetera, et cetera. And one day, one of the kids came home when he was like 8 or 9 and said, "Oh, that's so gay." And you better believe I sat him down.
Yeah.
And I probably shamed the poor child, because I said, "Do you realize what you're saying? Do you realize that what you're saying is like a negative connotation toward Danny, who is your friend and who is, I'm sure I scarred him for life. But what I'm saying is that we were really clear about it and had conversations with him, and he still went to school and got that language and brought it home, because that's what kids do."
I think I just want to jump in here really quick.
There was a package delivered. They get stolen all the time, so I'm just gonna go grab it.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine.
I think that with these kind of conversations, especially going back to the race thing, I think, from my personal opinion, it's always, kids are amazing in the respect that honesty actually goes a really long way. Now, honesty doesn't necessarily mean oversharing. Sometimes you can be honest with a kid and say, "Oh, you're too young for me to be telling you about that." Period. You know. Sometimes with some of these things, though, I think going back to when I was young, before we went to school, I saw Roots before I was ever like 5 years old. And because her idea behind that was like, I don't want him to be introduced to this somewhere else and be like, well, why is this happening? You know?
Yeah, I understand that.
Wait. Yeah, so, and because of all that, I know there's never a perfect time to tell your child about because I don't have a kid, but I understand the yearning, the impulse to protect your children from whatever you can is definitely going to be there. And that's what Emily's sister was dealing with. So there's no right or wrong time, and but it's about, because you still have to raise your children. Even if you tell your kids, like Becky said, about this stuff, they were still raising a kid that once she told him that, was the kind of person who took heed to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be raising good people, and they're gonna mess up because they're human. And so I kind of want to go back to the main topic in that, like, so what do you do for the police that mess up, and it's not necessarily, what do you do for the ones that mess up, like when it's a situation like this? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Mess up, you mean the ones that did the murder?
No. I mean the ones who do it unintentionally.
I think all of this goes back to having this dialogue with people and accountability, right? So even going back to the raising kids, like, there should be continuous dialogue, you know? So if they come back and they say something where you're like, no, I don't agree with that, let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they're 5, let's talk about it. When they're 7, let's talk about it. When an incident happens, let's talk about it. Let's have continuous dialogues so we can kind of break some things down. And then when it comes to like the police situation, like when you see your fellow officer doing something, let's have a conversation. Yo, why did you just handle him like that? You know, people are so afraid of having these conversations, and they're important, because if I'm silent, it really means I'm okay with you treating someone like that. Be bold enough to say, man, you shouldn't have handled that like that.
Yeah.
And then have that conversation and be okay with it having some type of conflict. But it's too many people being silent about it. You don't have to, I feel like as adults, you don't have to argue. You don't have to turn anything into this major, issue, but have a dialogue.
And simple stuff like what Timothy said was, this is what I say. Why is it so offensive? Stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
simple questions, simple dialogue
Mhm.
to explain certain things, because some people aren't trying to be, they don't know.
Bravo,
I think,
Timothy.
I think we're
No, I mean it's
I think
Right,
we're
it's-
getting soft as a community. We're getting soft.
And
Like,
100%.
this is why. Okay, do you remember the show In Living Color?
Yes.
yes,
It was open season on everybody.
everybody
Gays, racial, transgenders,
really
gangsters,
was.
squares. Everybody could get it, and it was just fun. But now you can't say nothing.
Can't,
Right.
yeah.
But I don't think that's a negative thing. The reason I do speak on that, I don't think it's a negative thing because I think where it comes from, I think the result might be negative, like because now everybody has to kind of walk on eggshells verbally.
Yeah.
But I think where it comes from is a more is a deeper respect and awareness that all humans are sharing now. Is like, I don't want to hurt someone. That's really where it comes from. I don't think it's so much that we're
It's a line, Duryea. Like you served, right, Timothy?
Mhm.
And I forgot your name, the other guy.
Cody.
Oh,
I didn't serve, no.
Okay, okay.
No.
Timothy, we've heard some of the most craziest stuff in the military, right?
Sure.
he's talking about the language when the drill sergeant.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking about fighting words.
Yeah.
But you learn to have tough skin. What I'm saying is people are getting weaker skin. You could call someone black and they'll be like, why you calling me black?
I think a lot of it comes down to time and place and the intention behind the message.
Yes, I agree with that. And I feel
like Chris Rock, right? Like Chris Rock says wild stuff all the time, but everybody knows that it's like not necessarily that it makes it better, but like in the right time and place, I think it's okay depending on the message behind it.
It just goes back to having mature conversations.
Yeah.
Like
I think that especially when you consider how historically dominated the media is by white people, and like being a white person, I don't want to speak for all white people, but I have some perspective for white people, and I really think that you're underestimating how much they're not kidding when they make those jokes.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
really.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's right.
It's interesting because like it is a fine line because I guess sometimes I know they're like not kidding, but like with my people, like the people who I be around, like I don't think I've really been around people who would make those kind of jokes at all.
I used to make a racially charged joke that I thought was really funny. I mean, I still do think it's funny in the sense of a joke, and now it's actually a joke to me. Like
Right.
I don't believe it at all. But at the time, there was some semblance of belief in that statement, in the punchline of the joke.
jokes are true. That's what makes them funny.
Well, and hearing those jokes is a huge part of why I'm racist. Because
Okay.
like
Not
it's
that
all in the
you're
culture.
racist. Not that
Huh?
you're racist. You mean
I'm definitely racist.
Oh,
Don't say
she's
that.
saying what I mean. Me too. Like, guys. So
I just told you when I get on the subway, I always want to sit next to
Listen.
white people.
listen.
I don't think that
I
makes you
know exactly what she's saying. When you are raised in a situation where you are taught to avoid certain people, and there are like words that are used for like something that still just kills me, and I can't even say the word because it makes me kind of physically ill, but like mixed nuts, and there's the like really large Brazil nuts. So there was a word that my family used to call those.
Okay.
And it never really occurred to me as a kid what that meant. But then as I got older, and one day I'm like going into the mixed nuts and I'm like, oh my God, that word is still there. Even though I've gotten rid of that fucking word, it's still there. I'm sorry, but seriously.
That goes back to the question I was asking about the mess ups, the police. I'm talking about the ones who are responding not intentionally, but because of those learned behaviors. Because I think there are police out there who are actually scared of black people.
Yeah.
And maybe not like I'm afraid, but
So
they haven't.
this is I think this goes back to, well, why do they have that? And it's because black people have more interactions with police. Well,
But it's
why
also
do they?
something that in my opinion, before they become police, They're boys and girls, little young
Right,
children.
right. Yeah, I'm getting to that. But it's like they have more interactions with black people. And well, why do they have those? Because black people commit more crimes. Well, why do they commit more crimes? Because of the foundation of the system
I don't think
puts
that's
them in
true.
bad positions.
Did you see that video of that woman in the park?
Yeah.
So that's another thing about it. Black people don't do that kind of shit. They don't weaponize the police.
Right.
You can't.
Well, the woman did.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, as a black
people
person, you can't.
You could, if you were like black and rich, maybe. But but my point is that also has another thing to do with it, and it goes back to the idea of in black neighborhoods. Some black neighborhoods, not all, definitely not all. In certain black neighborhoods, if you were to call the police for an incident, you would be a problem.
Like if I mean, we kind of talked about it. If you become a cop, like you're looked at differently. At least from a lot of people that I talk to. Like if you become a cop and you're black, like you're looked at differently. If you vote Republican, you're looked at differently. Like
I think that's part of our problem because we're not teaching young black men to become like members of the social change. Become a legislator, become a policeman, so you can become, or the mayor, so that you can affect that change and you can help hiring people who are going to protect black lives and be part of that, making sure that the training that the officers need, insensitivity is there, because what really happens is you get these police officers. Some of them are naturally raised to be cool. Some of them are raised to be racist. And then you have what happens.
And see, I think it's crazy going back to Emily's point as far as what we do in Aaron.
Wait, let him say that. Say what you said.
As far as what we as far as like what we do, we go on the subway, who we sit next to based on where we were raised and what we were taught. Because for me, if I step on the subway and I see Corey and Timothy, I'm sitting next to Corey. That's just how I was raised. Period. Like,
what do you mean?
Because I was raised primarily around black people. My mom married a black man when I was in elementary school. And I hung out with his family, his mom, his sisters, their cousins, going to the cookouts. Then, of course, that's who I was primarily friends with. That's who I was raised by. And that's even up to now. I'm married to a black woman, having two black sons. I just inherently, it's not that I hate white people, you know what I mean? But going back to your point, right. Prejudices to certain things in our mind. If I saw Timothy or Corey on the bus and I don't know either one of them, I'm sitting next to Corey if there's an open
That's
seat.
like, I would venture to guess if a dude got on our bus and there's an open seat next to a woman or a dude, most people are going to sit next to the dude.
Unless they trying to holler at the woman.
I'm sitting next to the woman.
I'm scared of men. Are
Really?
you kidding?
But you know, I think going back to what Durier
No.
was
I meant
saying,
like a dude would sit next to a dude.
I think going back to what you were saying, like, what do we do? I think it's problematic because I think you said something about some people fear, like some police officers fear black people. I think it's problematic if they're a police officer and they fear black people.
100%.
How did they get to that place? Because when they got that job, right, there should have been something to where you could see the mindset of that person who's going to have a gun, who's going to be policing the streets, who's going to be dealing with black people.
Hold on, what's your name?
Where is that process?
What's your name again?
Damali.
They want them to fear black people. This is what I was talking about, the tyranny. Mm-hmm. See, the underlying tone here is called white supremacy. Race is a social construct. There's a reason why when you fill an application out, they ask you to check your race. You get me when I say social construct? So I hear you, sister, you saying they should have seen it coming. I know police officers that are too smart and they tell them that they don't want them on the force. When they take that psychology test, if you're too smart, they don't want you. You know that, right?
Well, more importantly, in catching it and in finding out why, or finding out the people that do feel that way. I think more importantly, why do they feel that way?
That's what I'm saying.
Because it's white supremacy.
I think that a lot of white children are taught to be afraid of black people.
Not intentionally by their parents always. Sometimes intentionally.
Well, sometimes
and that becomes problematic when they get this authority.
Yeah.
Because
who has caused the most tyranny on the planet? Let's just ask that question.
But what we're saying, Corey, is I mean, what you're saying is about our history, and I don't think anyone's arguing the history, but looking ahead, because I think in this point in time, we're at a place of change. I think
you asked me what should we do, right? White people will tell you there's no such thing as white supremacy. You see the acknowledgement.
You have white people right here who
yes, there's something definitely called white supremacy. Absolutely.
I think that's what I'm saying, Corey.
There's also something called the patriarchy.
Yes.
I think what they're saying, Corey,
we don't have to get into that again.
Right. Corey, what they're saying is
I was in that conversation too.
Those are people on this panel, Duryea. I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
No, I think there's some things that we have a hard time controlling or fixing, right? I just think it's just different categories. So you have people who just have a deep embedded hatred in them. They're not going to change that before they pass away. They're going to have that. Then you might have a group of people, like you say, you might have been raised this way, or you might have been unconsciously, right? I'm really thinking about those people, the people that we actually can have some type of change with. Because if you have this in the back of your head and now you're becoming a police officer or whatever you have authority over, we need to figure this out before you're on the street killing somebody.
Yes.
Now the person that has that deep hate that's not going to change. I really honestly feel like those people I don't even have conversations with. When I see on social media, you have people who are making jokes about this guy who's like, those are not even the people I want to have a conversation with.
Right.
I want to have the conversation with people who are unaware, the people who you can make a change, the people who can say, yeah, I did think that way. Why did I think that way? Let me talk to you about that. That's the people I'm more concerned about.
I think going to Corey's to speak on Corey's point, I think a big portion of it is just how the media portrays things. Like, the media is not going to show a huge portion of the white people that are out there in support of, the black community. They're going to show, the media gets better ratings when there is conflict. And so, like, they don't show the unity. They're not showing the police officers that are out there, like, in unison with the black community. They're not showing, like, the positive parts. They're showing, like, the conflict, because that's what gets ratings.
I agree and I disagree with that. Only reason I say that is because that's why I think this time right here is so special. We have reports of, hey, the Amish people are out here protesting. Hey, white people are out here protesting.
Yeah.
There's a cop hugging a black. Like, it might not be. I get what you're saying. With the most entertaining part is going to be the broken glass and stuff. But there's still the fact that there's media out there. Period. Even showing those little stories, to me, that's like a spark that are going to eventually be a flame. You get what I'm saying?
So we also have to be aware, I think, that it's not, when we say the media, I don't disagree that the media does certain things, but we also, when the media focuses on the negative, because it feeds the people who want to watch that,
right? We,
the human race, make up those people. So there's something also problematic about what we want to watch and what we want to feed ourselves. You see what I'm saying?
So just accountability.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can't just say humans, that's what we connect with. We connect with the emotion of it.
Right.
You're not
just to clarify,
America are pirates. We're pirates. We like sex, drugs, violence, all that stuff. That's what comes up in the movies, right?
That's human nature.
Actually, back in the day, they used to make different versions of movies for different countries where they would have, I can't remember if it was like England had more sex and Japan had more violence, or if it was like the opposite. But American cuts were usually the most conservative because we're Puritans.
What? Puritans?
I mean, that's our, like, at least for white people, that's our...
When we lived overseas, they would show like naked people on the TV.
Yeah, and commercials and stuff.
Yeah, and then we would be like, oh my God, she's naked.
Yeah.
I mean, but my point, like, when you think about people, we're attracted to those kind of things. But I was telling Corey that we also have to remember that America's still a pretty young governmental experiment. Like, there's a lot of growing that America's doing when you compare it.
The same Americans that put SARS, smallpox in the Indians' blankets. They're
but
Puritans, right?
I don't necessarily see those things being mutually exclusive.
Corey.
Okay, what I'm saying is America has a history of destroying people and cultures. That's what we're ignoring. And they're still doing it.
We're not ignoring it. What we're saying is, what now? I think everybody here agrees.
Right now we have to acknowledge that is the history.
And I think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't think a lot of people are. I think
we're right with you with the acknowledgement of it.
The panel may be, but
you're saying more broadly.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I gotcha.
I get you with
that. To Corey's point, there needs to be a overhaul of the complete policing system and not just a couple things here and there. Accountability, citizen review boards.
Not even just the policing system, the whole system.
The whole thing, yeah.
The capitalist system, the patriarchal system, the racist system.
The whole thing, yeah.
But how do you do that effectively? I mean, I know none of us are lawmakers, but if you had your wildest dream or just even thoughts, how do you do that?
I think we have to hit them in the pockets.
So that's
certain things we don't need to pay, we don't need to buy, because since it is capitalistic, it's going to survive off cash flow. Okay? We need to demand that our banking system changes, and it's going to have to be, for example, if I put in $10,000, they're going to ask me where it came from. This is my money. I don't got to tell you nothing. But you know what? I allow it by saying yes or by saying nothing. You get my point? So we have to hit them in the pockets.
Because in order to be involved in the system and to profit from the system, you also have to adhere to the system. I get what you're saying. And
that's why sometimes it makes sense to loot the system.
I think personally, boycotts, maybe not right now because the economy's already kind of weird and hurting because of COVID-19, but I think if there was like an actual mass boycott, an actual one that was not only
not like a one-day boycott, but like we're gonna boycott this until we get results.
Yeah, and it was across the board where like it wasn't just like 100 people doing it; it was like millions of people doing it. What I think that something like that would actually be effective, and you can't be mad at them about violence. There's no violence. We're just not buying that shit.
Yeah.
So I think T.I. has really good intentions because so I talked to a friend about that, and I think it's a really good intention, but if it's only one day, it doesn't work. Like, remember when gas prices were super high and they were like, let's boycott buying gas on one day. Like, one day doesn't mean anything if you go back the next day and buy all the gas. But I think it'd be really interesting if, say, like Nike, because Nike is generally a company that speaks out against racism and like they support the black community. If you boycotted Nike until Nike actually started to lobby for you, I'm curious how that would work. Or if you
Nike makes a lot of money off of us. You're right.
Right. Like if you pressured these bigger companies into lobbying on your behalf, and I say your behalf, but like our behalf, the behalf of people that want change, I think, it'd be really interesting. Like, because I think ultimately the people, we do hold the power. It's just, we need to collectively come together and use it.
I think the education system needs to change as well, because now 100%. We've gotten so concerned about test scores, and we're still sort of stuck in that rut. Children are not being taught critical thinking.
No.
Thankfully, we have some really great teachers out there who do that, but that's not actually what they're charged to do, I think. I think that they're charged to teach this, and this. And thankfully, we've got teachers who teach more than just those things. We need teachers who are going to, I remember being taught to be civically engaged. Now, nobody told me which way I was supposed to think, and that's a problem even in of itself, that we've got two ways that you're supposed to think, Republican or Democrat, which is stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like there should be so much more enveloping all of that. But the fact that I was taught that I should be civically engaged by one of my social studies teachers is kind of a big deal. We don't really teach that anymore.
So I was shocked recently that I didn't know that education funding is based off of property taxes in an area. That's insane. and again, that disproportionately affects poor people, which is,
Yep.
you know, but again, another thing that I'm curious about, like, I didn't know this, but I have one of my best friends is Black, and he told me that in the Black community, it's not cool to go to school and learn and like try and be smart. Like, he's looked down upon because he's like an intellectual individual. I'm curious, is that a real thing? Like, I don't know.
I want to respond to that. Because I was telling Corey this the other day. Like, I think now it's a cool thing, but growing up, it was absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
To be a Black kid that wasn't, and I didn't know anything. I was just weird. I had real fat cheeks, and my gap was like this far apart. You know, all I wanted to do was watch Power Rangers, and and I love science. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I got raked across the coals every day at school. I had this little afro because I didn't care about my hair like all the other kids, and they used to call me Don King. It was rough. You know what I'm saying? So, and the thing about it is, now I think those Black kids like me are parents now, and they're teaching their kids that it's okay to be you. To me, the phrase of our generation is "be yourself." Generation right here, we're told that so much, and I think that's because our parents didn't get to be themselves. They had to be who they had to be, and that's why I think it starts with the children. Damali was right when she said some of these people out here, they just ain't gonna change. But there's people out here who, like Timothy, who says, "Why is that this way?" And they mean it sincerely. Yeah. I feel like we as people, when that happens, there's people out there. I'm going to be blunt. There's people out there who would hear that question from him and be like, "That's not my business to tell you. If you don't know, go find out." To me, I think that's irresponsible because, another human person's asking you for help understanding your issue. So answer them. You know what I'm saying? And yes, there's a lot of research out there. There's a ton of research out there that you could have gone and done yourself. However, I'm your friend and you asked me. And I think that comes into it. These conversations need to be both ways. We need to be willing to receive people, and we need to be willing to go out and ask those questions.
Yeah, I think like the children in education, besides the immediate change of policing, I think education is a really good place to start. Just like, how do we expect a community to become more educated? Like, obviously education affects life decisions. Like, I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
But like, how do we expect people to become educated if their education systems are based off of their wealth, and you can't accumulate wealth if you're not educated enough to get it? Right? Like, so like,
my thing, and I'll just talk about where I'm at, and a couple of y'all lived in Columbus for a minute, so there's an issue with our educational system from Macon Road down.
Yes.
You go Macon Road up, you get really good education. The best teachers go Macon Road up. If you go Macon Road down, it is mostly Black neighborhoods, and the funding isn't there, and the education level isn't there.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's literally a line in Columbus, Macon Road.
Cody, the question is, was that done on purpose?
Of course.
Yeah, Fair Housing Act.
I want to share something with you really quick, Corey, because I think it's a double-edged sword, because I think we have to take responsibility for that too, Black people. So I was doing this. I had a job down there where it was my job to go after school and teach the kids arts as a mean. It was a part of a tutoring program. Half of the program they tutored in their lessons, the other half they did an art thing, and I was teaching them dance. So as a dancer, ballet is your basis of discipline. It's the hardest one to do, and it's not as as cool as hip hop. You got to learn it.
Also because of white supremacy.
Well, I guess
Agreed.
when the kids went home, Corey, and told their parents that I was teaching them ballet, they came and demanded that I be fired. He's turning our children gay, they said. They demanded that I was fired, and I lost my job. So it's a double-edged sword.
Wow.
We have to take ownership of that too. Yes, the education systems may fuck us over, but you also have to think about the kind of parents that we had, Corey, the kind of grandmother we had, where it was their job too.
I'm not talking about that. But I'm just saying, I just wanted to add that in there. You're right. I get what you're saying.
All right.
I'm talking about on purpose tyranny. When I got my real estate license, we had a whole section on redlining. Do you know what redlining is, Duryea?
It's about drug zones, right?
No. Basically, in a way.
Okay.
Basically, a border of a territory that people would live on will have the rich in one side and the poor on another one. And the city was designed that way.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is, going back to not Cody, but Timothy. When it comes to what he was saying about the zoning stuff, there is. I'm losing my train of thought, but ultimately, we have to realize that these things are done on purpose. Now, questions that we need to be asking.
Yeah.
That happened during the Fair Housing Act. Like when Black people couldn't buy a house, like buying a house is the single greatest generational wealth building asset you can do. And for almost 100 years, Black people weren't able to buy houses. Like, of course, that was done on purpose.
And then there were restrictive covenants, and then there was blockbusting.
Yeah,
I mean, like it's just been insane.
So
And
is
then
that
even when they
tyranny? My
started-
question is that tyranny or not?
Yeah,
On some level, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we keep skipping over. We have a tyrannical government, not a democracy. Republicans.
Does everyone agree that our government is tyrannical? Question.
I mean, I think government in nature is always going to be tyrannical.
Okay. Dig into
To some degree. To some degree.
Is that necessary?
It depends on how much you're. I think that's like an individual question. Like, how much is an individual willing to?
Well, let's talk about
I
it.
don't know. I have to say, I don't think that just government has to be tyrannical. I really don't. Because looking at other governments, like I lived in Sweden for a year as an exchange student, and I don't think that government is tyrannical. I think that government tries really hard to be supportive of communities, and in a way that is really overt and really in our country we would be like, oh, socialism, scary, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the tax rate in Sweden?
It's high, but there was a point in our country's history when we had similar tax rates. And
what are their immigration laws?
They're very open, actually.
It's extremely hard to become a Sweden citizen.
Oh, no. There are many, many immigrants in Sweden. Even when I lived there, there were many immigrants.
Were they citizens?
Now, I don't know if they become citizens. That's a good thing that I would need to do some research into. But I know that while I lived there, there were a lot of immigrants, and I think that immigration even increased after that. I do think that now Sweden has started a little bit to be skittish about having more immigrants.
Did the police beat their citizens in Sweden?
So I want to give you guys a definition really quick of tyrannical. Okay, it says exercising power in a cruel or arbitrary way.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not Sweden.
I don't think it's necessary.
Sweden pull up on you.
I don't think that the U.S. government is arbitrary. I think it's very calculated.
So then it wouldn't be tyrannical?
I've never known that to be part of the definition of tyrannical, so now I'm not sure what I think.
Tyrannical, I guess to me, I can think, the reason when I hear arbitrary, it makes me think, okay, everybody, Cody's got to leave us, so.
Oh, no.
I know.
Yeah.
We actually wrap up here soon anyway, but you have to go right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go. Thanks for all the stuff you said.
For being here.
Of course. Thanks for the people I don't know for meeting y'all, for being in this conversation. This was amazing. Duryea, hit me up later.
Man.
Cody,
Yes,
actually, do
Say
you
hi to Tam.
final thought?
Yeah, please.
Final thoughts. I'm glad we had this conversation. It's just now we have to, if we want to make this stuff a reality, come up with plans, get together, meet with people in different arenas when it comes to education, when it comes to law enforcement, and figure out how to affect change, period. And to Damali's point, don't forget about it in 2 weeks. but let's keep it at the forefront of our mind, because it's something that we have to make better for our grandkids, their kids moving forward. So, but thank you guys for having me on. This was
Thank
fun.
you for being here.
So,
Actually, guys, we this conversation is very good. I'm so glad we had it, but we are running a little over. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna call it. We're gonna do our final thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here. This conversation, I hope it does something for people to realize that it's okay to have these kind of conversations and it's necessary. So I want everybody to get their final thoughts in. Does anyone have an urge to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right.
As far as I think my thoughts are already pretty much out there with the conversation, but final thoughts are start where you're at. If you're not having town meetings, or I'm talking about even if it's 2-3 people, it'll grow eventually. Have a meeting in your community about these things. And we also have to realize that whether we're in a tyrannical government or not, which I believe, we have officials and elected officials that's within our state. It's not always about the president. Some people don't even know who their mayor is, So have those little town meetings and get acquainted with your local politicians.
Okay. Anyone want to go next?
I'll say something just short and sweet. Like I said earlier, just don't be afraid to have those conversations, not with just people in your circle, but anytime you're in a group of people, you just want to have conversations to see if there is a way you can, not necessarily that you can change someone, but just to be able to hear what other people think, other perspectives, so that everybody can, just have an idea of how other people feel and just be open to it.
Excellent. Anyone else want to go? I mean, everyone's going to go, but you want to go next?
Yeah. I think that it's really important for us to be willing to be uncomfortable and to listen and to not be afraid to say things, especially, like Timothy's questions. I love that. And so, yeah, be uncomfortable.
Awesome. Emily, Tim, who wants to go first?
I think just because it goes in line with that, I think try to push yourself to get to the point to where you're uncomfortable, because that's probably the position that you're going to be growing in. And then additionally, like I said when we opened, don't look at it from a me versus you, right versus wrong, but how do we get to a point where we're making progress? And then additionally, just always try and let people make you question what you think you know.
Excellent. And Emily?
So mine's gonna be long. I think that one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is how to reach people, because I definitely agree with Damali that we have to be willing to have the conversations, and I agree with Becky that we have to be willing to have them even when we're uncomfortable. But it seems like the efficacy of these kind of conversations is not always there, and it seems to sort of slip away. And I think about my grandfather a lot. I've probably told Jerry this story before, but he was old school Atlantan and was racist in many ways. And my mother growing up in the 70s tried to have conversations with him, and my sister and I have had conversations with him and stuff, and he would listen, but whatever. And then when he was on his deathbed, he had a really meaningful relationship with the nurse who was caring for him, and she happened to be Black, and it changed him. And he said to my father before he died, crying, why does it take the end of your life to figure it out, or whatever, because this woman basically, I guess, made him see race differently or whatever. And I'm not trying to be oh, happy ending story for racism or whatever, because obviously this is not the norm. But I think what could I have said to him to make him have that realization earlier in life? How did I miss the boat? And I think a lot about, scholarship and what I'm doing right now in academia, but man, it goes back to the artists. I think I think that the people who do any kind of art, now's the time, because I can't think of any other way that you can reach people in that intimate way. So anyway, that's it.
Can I say something really quickly?
No. Yeah. You can.
Emily, you also just said it. It's about creating relationships.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Emily, because it's crazy that we have the exact same story, except it was my grandma. She was telling me that because that's what she does for a living. She does, and she's like in her 80s, and she takes care of dying people. So, but she's been doing that for a while, and she told me about her current, or not maybe not her current, but her last employer, who basically told her all of his friends that he had his whole life are gone, and some of them just not around. And he's just like, you treat me better than all of them, like, because she's got to take care of him, which is when you're dying, that's a very gruesome job. And he told her that he had that same experience, where it's like, why couldn't have I learned this quicker? It just blew my mind that you just said that, because
Wow.
and we've never had that conversation. But
I guess not.
It, to me, I don't know about this situation. I don't know where to go. I'm afraid too, just because I love people, and I don't like seeing people hurt, especially because I feel it. I don't like seeing people hurt, but this is my way of helping us change, creating platforms like this. And when I tell you guys, I'm so happy that y'all are here, because I really feel like this is my art, like Emily said, and this is us trying to do something instead of just being afraid and staying and dealing with our neutrality, So I really want everybody who sees this, everybody who watches, even if it's like 2 people, have a conversation with somebody who you might not have had a conversation with before. Don't write people off because they say 1 or 2 things, like they call you colored instead of black. No, let's get rid of all that. Let's get to their in here. You can tell when a person means well and when they don't. And when they mean well, give them that same and let's grow together, So thank you. This has been another awesome time at Talk It Out, where we talk it out. Keep in mind that it's not about being right or wrong. It's about listening and being heard.